high unemployment, high inflation equals a bad outcome. That's the thesis. Are the numbers exact? No, the point that was made with this misery index is misery, right? Unemployment and inflation. Inflation is insidious. Most people expect it. In fact, some people think some inflation's good, but a lot is bad. No, it's stealing is what it is. It's guaranteed stealing from those that have to earn a living.
Switch towards a life of financial freedom. The LODE wallet helps you make the right switch by giving you access to a more reliable, inflation-resistant money you can trust. Money backed by silver and gold that empowers your businesses to eliminate expensive fees and settle payments instantly, and preserves your wealth for generations to come. Take back control. Download the LODE wallet today and begin building your honest money portfolio.
Welcome to Inside the Markets, flagship podcast at StockPulse.com. Joining me today, David Morgan of the Morgan Report, precious metals analyst. Of course, David wrote the Silver Manifesto and speaks at many investment conferences, so including our own here, the StockPulse Silver Symposium, and will again this year. So David, certainly appreciate that. And you and, of course, your colleague, David Smith. So yeah, I guess, David, appreciate the time. And I guess what I want to get into first, here's maybe a big picture view here, how David Morgan sees things. Record inflation. You talked to John Williams, he'd add 10 points on it. You've got a national debt that's out of control, never seen before. And you got a Fed that wants to raise a point here in already a delicate market. So David Morgan, again, appreciate the time. And how do you see the big picture here?
Well, I'll do that for what it's worth, Rob. I think you outlined the high points. But before I start, I just want to do a public shout out to you for putting together the Silver Symposium. And of course, it's always an honor to be invited to any of those venues, but here, close by. And, I was concerned somewhat that, not could you pull it off, just will you get enough attendance? It was really the first one of a face-to-face in quite some time. And of course, I will put our area, the Coeur d'Alene Resort, up against almost any venue I've seen anywhere in the world. It's just an absolutely beautiful, gorgeous place to have a conference. So congratulations on that. It takes a lot of guts to do something, and unless you've done it, and I've done it on a very small scale, not the scale that you've done, it's a lot of work, and it's a strain, it's a stress, because you've got to make so many, you got to have so many people in order to, break even. It's a pretty large investment. You make commitments. So I probably went too far there, but I want to make it out public because people think, oh, I'll put on a symposium and make a bunch of money. It doesn't work that way. It's pretty hard work, but thank you. So economy, I don't even know what to add to. Let's break it down. Inflation. All right. Inflation, as John Williams says, is probably higher than it's ever been. Now, when I was a youngster, there was, and I give credit, I can't remember who it was. I think it was someone like James Sibbett. You'd have to look him up. I don't know if he shows up on the internet. He was a gold, silver nut way back when I was quite young, like 18, 19, 20. And I don't think it was him, but somebody in that genre that said there was a misery index. And the misery index was 2 times the unemployment plus the inflation rate. And the theory, and it was a theory, is if that went over 50, your country was going into the toilet. So what is the true unemployment rate? Of course, that's really hard because you've got U3, you've got all these different metrics, but it's quite high relative to what were broadcast by the mainstream financial markets or the government. And then the real inflation rate. So I'd say, I forget, I haven't looked at John's site for unemployment in a long time, but I think during the height of the illness, it was somewhere around 20%. So let's cut that in half and make it, 10%. So 2 times that is 20. And we got an inflation rate of probably, what does he say, 15 probably? So yeah. We're at 35. We could have an unemployment rate of 25%, double that year, 50 plus 15. So I don't know where we are. What I'm trying to convey is that high unemployment, high inflation equals a bad outcome. That's the thesis. Are the numbers exact? No, the point that was made with this misery index is misery, right? Unemployment, and inflation. I'll say a couple more words. Of course, you can interrupt any time, Rob. It's a conversation, but inflation is insidious. Most people expect it. In fact, some people think some inflation is good, but a lot is bad. No, it's stealing is what it is. It's guaranteed stealing from those that have to earn a living. And it continues on and on and on. Now, there's a lot of talk and misunderstandings about inflation. Inflation is simply an increase in the money supply. It does not guarantee that a price of any one thing will go up at a certain time. And it doesn't necessarily indicate that gold and silver have to go up. It is an increase in the money supply, and that increased money supply can go a lot of places. It could go into a bank vault and be sterilized and act as if it never was printed. It can go into the stock market and keep making these index go higher and higher. It can go into a new adventure like a digital math formula that produces a unit that's perceived value. In other words, a crypto. So there's lots of places that this increased money can do and not necessarily cause an effect that most people expect. A lot of people expect inflation means higher gold prices. Really, gold does best in a deflation. That was proven by Professor Jastrom in the book, The Golden Constant. And remember, the gold is a constant. I mean, an ounce of gold is the stable coin of all time. Most gold, a lot of gold is in coin form, and it doesn't change. So what changes? Well, what changes is the value of what that unit can purchase. Sometimes it can purchase, half a barrel of oil. Sometimes it can purchase 10 barrels of oil, as an example. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. So I want to move on to the next topic, and that is an inflation that you mentioned. The other one is the political scene. And the political scene across the board, meaning all political stripes, I don't care if it's communism, socialism, fascism, any genre you want to use, it's all controlled by the banking system. And this is something that seems to be lost on most people. Well, we have, anarcho-capitalism, or we don't have crony capitalism, or we do, or whatever. All that was summed up in a statement that was purportedly Amstel Rothschild that said, let me control the money and I care not who makes its laws. And that is such a fundamental fact that seems to be very, very misunderstood or very much looked over. It's as if the elites, with their constant barrage of media that's in their control, gets everyone to the next level down, which means you're red or you're blue, you're R or you're D, you're socialist or you're not, you're for people, you're against, all these divisions, while the puppet master is pulling the strings on both sides because they control the money supply. Governments are the enforcement or the force behind the elite bankers. Remember, the governments have to borrow from the bankers. So who are they in allegiance with? The people that print the money. It's when the government does this, government gave us this, government provided that, government provided that free handout because they had to borrow the money from the banker that owns them, which means they do whatever the banker tells them to do. Oh yeah, but we got so-and-so in office and everything's changed. Well, it may have the appearance of change, and perhaps it did change a few things. Maybe the handouts went to different people. Maybe one set of the society was favored over the other one that's different than the previous administration. But it's all the same hierarchy, and that hasn't changed. And the only thing I can see that may, and I use that word as a possibility, is where the people have the ability to take control of their own finances. But even that's misunderstood in my studied opinion. I've been looking at this a long time. A lot of people say, I don't know what I'm talking about. That's fine. but I've studied money a long time, and crypto is just a facet of what we can loosely call money, because there's only two theories of money. I digress. I'll come right back. Money could be either specie, which means gold and silver, basically, or it could be a legal edict. And that's really the only two theories of money. So if it's a legal edict, the government can make it whatever they say, which is a piece of paper with their script on it, say the Federal Reserve note for what's the reserve currency of the world. Or it can be something that competes with that could be something made up by decentralized finance, which there's very little that's really decentralized. So I think there's a chance, but I think the chance is much more of a slim chance than most of the people that think they understand cryptos far better than I, is their claim. But if they really examined it, they will find out that it's not decentralized, that when you go through any of the exchanges, they get your name, rank, and serial number. I mean, it's not decentralized. You take a sip, I come over and go out with you for a beer or something, and I pay in cash, and the guy doesn't ID me because you can tell by looking at me I'm a little over 21. It's anonymous. But if I use my Bitcoin wallet and they accept it, and I do it through a credit card, which all these things exist, there's actually a transaction on that. They want to track it down and find out I was at a bar in Coeur d'Alene with Rob Goodman at 5 o'clock on Friday night. We had a beer at the Oho Saloon. They could determine that. So I digress to make the point that the only freedom through the financial system, which would mean a lot of freedom, is not nearly as adaptive as many believe at this time. We have a chance, but not a very big one in my view. And unfortunately, who's gotten into the most popular of the cryptos? And that's, of course, the banks.
Yeah, I think we're in the wrong business here. The bank cartel's got a pretty good one going there, making money on about everything. So let's there's no really debate on inflation. I think we could certainly debate numbers. But let's talk about what to do about it. You've made a career. This is no surprise to you. I've been in enough of your talks about what left of the dollar. There's nothing much left of it. So I guess that leads probably to precious metals here, where you're real bread and butter here. So maybe give us a little forecast here. You just painted a hell of an atmosphere here, probably for gold and silver. So talk about kind of how you see that playing out here in 22.
Yeah, I think there's gonna, I think the big battle, of course, Rob, and we've talked privately, is good versus evil, and real money versus fake money. I mean, and the only real vestige of hope you have that's been founded years ago by the populace is silver and gold coins. Basically, you could use bars, but a weight of precious metal, and that's the most decentralized finance that there is. And the banks talk it down and gold's a pet rock and all that, yet they all own it. Well, why do they own it? They own it because it's their backup plan. There may be plan A, B, C, D, E, and F, but plan Z, if everything fails, they pull out the gold card. And, oh, well, gold is money, everything else is credit, and we've got the gold and you don't, and we're going to restart. We're going to, reset the banking system. And this is how we're going to do it. It's going to be on, gold standard or semi-gold standard, or more likely tokenized gold standard. And that's why they own it. But they don't broadcast that. And you won't even know it unless their other systems of total financial control fail, which they know this one's failing. And they know they want to have a central bank digital currency. What they really want is a cashless system run by the banks, and eventually a bank, the Globo Bank, the one unit that's pervasive throughout all cultures. So there's no, currency fighting. It's either, you have it or you don't. You either take it or you won't. And it's the system. And that's the beast system that's been talked about. Most people don't know. It's been a long time since I've mentioned this, but the main computer in Belgium is called the beast. beast. So think about it. So it's going digital. That's what they want. How do you escape that? You get real money. You do it. It's legal. You can pay for anything with gold and silver on a private one-to-one basis. But if you do it in a transaction in, let's say, a enterprise that has a municipality above it or a state organization, like somewhere in Utah, you can do it because they have passed that law. You can make any transaction you want between parties as long as both sides agree. And many states have done that, Rob, as you know, and I think that's a trend. So as this whole thing starts to unravel, there's a pushback. There is a group, I wouldn't say group, there are many people and platforms and entities and groups and associations that have come up with ideas surrounding cryptocurrencies, precious metals, local dollars, barter exchanges. And this is what happens at the end of all the great inflations. People look for a way out because they see what's coming, they see what's happening, and they prepare for it in their own ways. And they know the disruption will be, get worse. And so they use ingenuity and common sense, and they come up with ideas that will help them and their fellows to come through this thing. We are at a point now where there's so much control, and the bankers don't want to lose that, obviously. And of course, the ones that are, let's say, the best choices at the present time are getting pushed back on by the regulators because they want to make sure that they have a handle on everything. So just using XRP as an example, I mean, they've gone through a pretty long court battle. No one really knows that unless it's been settled, and I'm not the top crypto guy, I admit that, but I had a pretty good handle on it. And it looks like XRP probably will win based on the latest information that I have gone through. And yet, if you dig deeper, it's a pretty clear indication that about 8% of that's owned by the Rothschilds. So there you go. You get a currency that really does have a good functionality to it. And then you go deeper in that, you look at, what Reggie Middleton has done with a patented, patent that basically, and I don't want to misstate this, but basically almost any transaction that's done on the blockchain, he's got a patent on it. And that's a loose interpretation of it. I don't want to misstate it, but that's the general idea. So that brings in the question, oh, wait a minute, does that mean XRP is breaking into the patent that Reggie Middleton has? And the answer is, I'm not sure, but it's something to contemplate. So there's a lot of levels here, Rob, that are out in the not too distant future that changes the way we interact with each other through commerce. And it is a mess. It's a mess. No one can agree on almost anything that comes to this new system. And yet the banks keep telling us, we'll reset, you'll own nothing and you'll like it. We don't want to miss this opportunity.
Build back better.
Build back better system. And they don't know, they think they know what they're doing. And I think, from a very calm and meditative place, looking into it deeply, I don't think they know. There's somebody, meaning they really don't know how it's going to unfold. They know what they want, and they just don't know how to achieve it. And it's a mess. It really is a mess.
So I guess the implosion of the dollar is just an if not when, or a when not if scenario, probably.
It is, and that's a problem for them, in my view, because they want to control the implosion. They want that controlled demolition. It comes down when we say pull it and building 7 drops, but nothing hit it. They want that kind of power and control. So when building 7 does hit the ground, they're able to come out and put their false flag nomenclature on it and say, this is what really happened. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. And here's our solution. As we've said 1,000 times, thank you, David Icke and others, problem, reaction, solution. So they want the problem. And of course, the solution will be them to maintain more power and more control over the financial interactions of all humans on the planet. You'll have to have an interface with the internet that you are verified to be you and only you. And without that interface, you are not going to be able to do transactions. And it could go as far, and it sounds, I won't say it sounds absurd, it sounds not as plausible at this moment in time that you have to be vaccinated to get that real ID to interface with the internet. But I still think that's a possibility. And I say that because I think, and this is my thoughts, I would say alone, I'm sure others are thinking something similar, that the illness was phase 1. And there could be phase 2. I mean, is it related to 5G? I don't know. I haven't looked at it hard enough to be convinced one way or the other. So I'm open-minded. So 5G could, make illness number 2, or is there another one out there, or smallpox around the corner, or, who knows? I mean, I hate to sound like Mr. Doom and Gloom, but I've been pretty good so far about thinking ahead of the present day, not with exact dates and times, but with, as you started, the 36,000-foot view, where you take the big picture. When you control both sides, you don't really care which side wins. And this is something that people don't get. Well, my side's winning, my team won, things are going to get better. Well, maybe slightly, maybe your tax rate changes for your betterment, or it's stuff that matters in a way, but from the big picture view, really doesn't matter that much.
It's bread and circus. It's bread and circus. It's what they've done forever. And even if you're getting a little extreme on your views, which I don't think you are, there's plenty of proof to back you up on that. But they've talked about a social credit score, things of that nature to control your habits. So I guess if we reel that back in, David, as someone who's smart and been in the sector as long as you have, there's a reason why you've been doing this. And it seems like all roads kind of lead back to the metals scenario. Will they? So let's talk about what a reset looks like. If a controlled demolition of the dollar, what's the new rollout? How does that look? Is there an element of gold, silver? Is there an element of Bitcoin in there? Cryptos? What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope I won't be as long-winded. I hope you people are okay with me. Anyone doing this probably put up with me. There's no doubt in my mind what they want. I wrote about this about a year ago in the premium service, that they want a unbacked central bank digital currency that they can print to infinity, and it's required by everybody. That's what they want. So it is a digital dollar, we'll call it. Now, I will go and defer to Jim Sinclair and Bill Holter that say or believe that won't work. And I tend to agree with them, which means that round 1 will be the new reset that's basically rejected by the public, rejected by maybe the banks, maybe rejected by the insurance companies, maybe it's rejected by the financial markets. I don't know. But let's just make the supposition that it doesn't work. Then they come out with round 2 because it wasn't trusted, or there wasn't confidence in it, or there was some glitch, something that, caused it to be rejected. So round 2 could be a tie to gold, or a tie to silver, or tie to commodities. As you know, Rob, we talked offline very briefly. It'll probably be tied to 2 things: your social credit score and how much carbon you use. So it could be based on carbon. So maybe the plan is to have it fail. And then after the failure is always a planned demolition. And then they come back and say, oh, it's not as friendly to the people as it should be, and it's not as environmentally friendly as it should be. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that with our Real ID program, we know that you are you, and we all know that you want to be good little boys and girls, little slaves in our game, and we are going to monitor everything you get, and you don't need to work. You just get your universal basic income, and you get so many carbon credits. And you can blow those carbon credits the first day of the month and then mooch off people, to try to live out until you get your next free check, or, whatever. So I really do, unfortunately, think that that's the basic direction, is total control of everything that you do, that you travel, that you put in your mouth, that you download, that you say. That's what the Internet of Things is. It's tying everything into the system. So there isn't anything that escapes the system. The only way to escape the system is not to be in it at all. And there's a fictional book called Highland, written by my friend Franklin Sanders, who's a big silver guy in Tennessee. I had the pleasure of meeting him face to face after years and years, decades of talking to him, over the phone, that kind of thing. But in this fictional book, it's people that just live an agrarian lifestyle that refuse to join the system. And a lot of the dystopian movies are like that, Rob. You've seen them. I can't, you can probably name some.
Aren't they called the Amish?
Yeah, that's a good one. And, then there's dystopian movies where, well, look at Hunger Games, basically. And then you've got, the Capitol, and then you've got everyone else, right? But of course, they're in the system. But there are people probably outside of what do they call them? They didn't call them cities. I forget what the name was, but regardless, there were probably people out there living off them. Is it going to go that direction? And the answer is, I don't know. And it really sounds bizarre, dystopian, unreal, and all those adjectives. But that's the trend. And as you pointed out, and I'm so happy you did. Well, that's impossible. Wait a minute. It's been that way for a long time, because the Amish, the Mennonites, they do exist. In fact, it's funny you bring that up, because a couple of the areas that I've looked at for relocation purposes had a pretty strong Amish community right there. Yeah, they exist, and they do pretty well without, let's say, being in the system, although they still use the US dollar. That I don't know what their banking relationships are exactly.
Yeah, I would suspect they probably have a little stash of some metals there too. So, well, let's owning metals is practical for some, maybe not for others. And the storage has always been a problem here. So I know there's a company that you are friendly with, LODE, and I want you to kind of run through that, how that works, because that is your storage. Sure, it'd be great to have grab your vault, but it's not realistic in hauling that thing around. So why don't you give me your input on LODE?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about currency is, we were on a gold standard and a silver standard. We were on a bimetallic standard of both gold and silver. And the problem was then, what it is now, is no one really wanted to carry around a little bag of gold, especially, or silver, because of various reasons: weight, inconvenience, robbery. There were a lot of reasons. So certificates were printed up, and those were exchanged. So you had a currency that was backed by metal, that was valid, warehouse receipt, if you will. You could go in and get your metal anytime you chose to do so. And then that morphed into the system we have now, which is backed by nothing. So with the new world, you can tokenize it, which means it's basically an electronic certificate. And I think it's safer from the aspect that not only is it convenient to carry around, because you're carrying your phone with you anyway, but its audit process is better than it would be, let's say, in what currently is obtained through the system we have now. Which means that the blockchain, one thing about it that's really positive, it's immutable. I mean, everything that goes on there stays on there, and you can't really jigger with it at all, or at least that's the story. There may be some back doors. I won't go into that whole. So it's a ledger. It's a perfect ledger. All transactions are on the ledger. Everyone can see them. So you have a pretty good feel for it. The silver's there, if the gold's there, and how much is in and out going on. On LODE specifically, it's a little bit misunderstood. I just had someone write me an email, very friendly. I don't get too much hate mail. And what he heard me on another interview, I talked about the convertibility of LODE. And really, it's not that complicated, but it took me a while to get it. There's really two sides to the project. One is the LODE, and the other is the tokens. The tokens are gold and silver. They use the periodic chart symbols. So the symbol for silver is AG, the symbol for gold is AU, when they put an X behind. So you got AUX and AGX. Those are the tokens, and those are exchangeable for physical metal. The LODE is where you choose to, you don't have to, contribute to the business, I'll call it. And that is done by using precious metals. But that you don't get back. That's like buying a perpetual bond or maybe a master limited partnership or something like that. So if my sister has me, so it's pretty common in the oil industry. So you put in $100,000 and you don't get your principal back. But what you do get back is a check for $20,000 per year until that well goes dry. So after 5 years, you've got your principal back, so to speak, and then it goes another 10 years and you've gotten 200,000. So in total, you got your principal plus double your money back over a 15-year period. That's sort of the idea. I'm not saying the rate of returns are that high. I'm just trying to make the principle clear. So this gentleman probably misunderstood, or I'll put it on my back. I love to put stuff on my shoulders because it's good feedback to me. I didn't explain it very well. So if you go into, let's say, the business side of LODE, that's what you're investing in. Now, when you do put that metal into it, you do spawn new AGX and AUX that go to the account. But are they 20% like a satellite? No, they're not. But as the system progresses and there's more and more people that adapt to it, could go beyond that. I'm not saying it will. I'm just using a forward-looking statement. Please use all cautionary statement, not financial advice. Entertainment purposes only. The idea being that it's a way to put metal to work for you. But as far as going in, hey, I put in 100 ounces of silver. I want my silver back. You didn't read your contract. No. But it only spawned 10 AGX so far. That's right. It'll do it until the world ends or whatever. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to go. Hopefully, for a very long time. So I think, did I explain that to your satisfaction? So there's two parts you can do. So if you don't want anything to do with contributing metal to, I'll call it the business, you don't have to. It's like any of the other ones that you just have basically a token exchange. So you can buy AGX or AUX and tokenize your gold or silver. You don't have to put it on the LODE side. But if it is on the LODE side, it is not redeemable. If it's on the AGX or AUX side, it is. So it's pretty simple once you get it, but some people, don't. And I will admit, at the very beginning of it, I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm giving you this much silver. Why can't I get it back? And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, you're in a startup. I mean, 99% of startups fail. I knew it was high risk. I forgot it was that high risk. And we had our moments. I mean, there were times and I told people right from the start, don't do it. Let me do it. And once this thing's working perfectly, you may not, I don't know if it's true anymore, be able to come in on the side. You can only come in on the AUX or AGX side, but that's not true right now. And then on top of that, to complicate things, I don't want to do it today, but we should come back and visit. It's the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which is basically decentralized finance. And it's all that anonymous stuff we want with real money, reestablishing the gold standard in the blockchain space. However, there is a caveat to it. I'll be straight up about it. You can be in the DAO, but to get to the DAO, you have to be KYC. So it has to be a know your customer. Once you know your customer, then you can go into the DAO and there you're anonymous. So how anonymous are you? They've already KYC'd you through another platform. Probably not anonymous. But the idea of building up a gold standard on the internet or a silver standard or what have you, I think there's a lot of very interesting, brilliant people out there in the crypto space coming up with some extremely interesting ideas on how to better what's already there, the old better mousetrap thing, and also to redefine finance. I mean, the problem with finance, I just did an interview with Reggie Middleton, and I did such a great job of explaining in such simple terms how, the banksters get in the middle of everything that we do, right? I mean, you go to the gas station, you put in your credit card, and you Oh, the convenience, I don't have to have somebody pump my gas and all that, which it's in my mind. But I don't stop and think, yep, that doggone banker is ripping me off again. But he is.
3% at a time,
Yeah.
if not more.
Yeah.
Well, so we've established a couple ways to be involved here. Obviously, bullion and something digital, LODE. Perhaps people should certainly look into that. Let's get to another place here to make some money, but it's very high risk, and that's junior mining. I know that's certainly part of your business model. In fact, I spoke with your colleague yesterday, and you guys probably have all kinds of things mapped out in the summer, some projects. But how do you see kind of I don't know how things are going for the sector? Certainly was a year off. A lot of charts were down. Some good companies there, maybe a chance to weed out some of those lifestyle companies. But how do you see the overall landscape of that sector?
I'm still bullish. I mean, on aggregate, if you combine all of the mining sector into one lump sum, what you find is it's the inflation adjusted low of almost all time. So you're buying a low. As far as the junior specifically, and I've actually thought about this, not that it's any breakthrough thinking, but what's interesting to me, as old as I am, is that the junior mining sector was the Bitcoin of old. I mean, the only place that you could get 100-to-1 return in a year's time, let's say, was in the junior mining space. Now, it was also in the oil sector, but it was mostly in the gold sector. Could happen, I could do it with one of these limited partnerships in oil, but mostly it was around mining. So, the penny stock exchanges in mining have not gone away. And they offered at the time the only Bitcoin-like returns. Of course, now since the cryptocurrency started in 2008 or so, 9, that crypto has taught a whole generation of new investors that all you've got to do is buy something with a cute name and you're going to get rich. And it reminds me of my time at that age, when all you had to do was buy something with gold in its name that was a junior mining company. You're going to get rich, because these things do go in cycles. And when the gold fever is full bore, instead of where we're at now and an inflation adjusted low, when it gets where some of the cryptos have been, I know they're backing off now, Rob, where everybody's talking about it. Well, which crypto do you own? Which, well, I own this one. And well, did you hear about this one named that? What does it do? I don't know, but it sounds good. That kind of stuff. When you get into that kind of frenzy, and I've seen it. Will it return to the mining sector or not remains to be determined. I think as we see an unraveling of the system, that it doesn't have much longer to live, and then the powers that want to be, the parasites at the top that suck everything out of us that actually work, they're prepared for their ideas. But the point being is, I think it will be a run to gold again. I think it'll be significant. It may be temporary. In other words, it may not last a great long time. It could do what silver did in 1980. Let me explain. I think this will be helpful. I hope it is. So if you go back to 1979, silver's at an all-time high at $6. Silver never been that high in US dollar terms, $6. And then you fast forward 1 year later and it was at $50. So it went up over 850% in 1 year. Sounds like a Bitcoin, doesn't it? And everyone talks about that. Now, it was a one-day event. It did hit 50. It's a true statement. But what people don't consider is when it backed off, which it did, it was, Black Thursday, it hit, I think, $10 in March, I forget the date. If you take the average price of silver for 1980, the whole year, it was $20. So here's my point. Silver at the beginning of 1979 was $6. And 1 year later, the average price for the whole year was 3 times its all-time high from the previous year. Are you with me?
Oh.
So now, if we take it to modern day, let's say silver's all-time high would have to be above 50. But we'll just take the 50 for an example, and it goes at 8-fold. So it goes to 400, and then it backs off by 60% or something. and goes down to what, 125. I'm trying to do the math in my head, just giving the idea, and it stays there for the whole year. Will that happen? I don't know. And we were talking about gold, so I could bring it more to gold. Gold could spike high and then be implemented into the new system. And going from, let's just make up some absurd numbers most people won't believe, 10,000 an ounce gold. And then it's actually reestablished at 5,300. And that's the new basis for the central bank digital currency called the Fed coin. It's backed by, 0.0001 grains per unit or something. Who knows?
So then I guess on top of that, then these juniors are just going to take that ride.
Oh, they will
have multiples.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing me back on track. That's right. But that's your question, and that's the answer that you had to provide to me. You're right. You will see these things go cuckoo crazy. And the thing about the junior space is some of them have tight floats. There aren't that many, stock certificates out there. And that's the ones that could go from 12 cents to 12 bucks. All of them can. I mean, it's such a small market, and there's so much funny money out there. You can run almost any of these. I mean, I believe some of the top tier that I own will act like penny stocks once this thing gets going, because the institutions don't own them. And they can't go into a penny if they're crying out loud. The whole market cap of the company might be 20 million. So then they take that to what, 200 million, and it's still nothing to them. That's nothing in today's financial world. So they can't even play in that space, but they could go into a Royal Gold or a Wheaton Precious Metals or something like that, just to get some exposure. And silver is so scarce, especially on the physical realm, that any exposure to silver will be very hard to obtain. The only way most of these places will be able to obtain anything close to it will be a proxy, which means either an ETF, which would be my first choice, or a major silver mining company or royalty company or streaming company. So I don't think our days are over, Rob. I know we're biased because we're both in the sector. We also are old school. We know real wealth comes from something you can hold in your hand. It's real estate, it's an automobile, it's a yacht, it's a plate of food, something tangible. Everything money, whether it's honest money or fiat, is a representation for something that you're going to purchase in the future. The only difference is that one is one that's held the test of time and is trusted, irrespective of religion, place on the planet, national origin, sex, anything. It doesn't matter. Honest money is honest for everyone, whereas the system we're under now is a control mechanism for those at the top that control our governments.
In closing, David, why don't you tell people how they can find you and follow and get involved in the Morgan Report? Obviously, you do all the research and that people aren't able to do. So tell them how they can follow you.
Yeah, me and others, as you know, David Smith, just shout out to David and Chris Marchese, who still works with us, and others. It is a team. It's a small team. We're all very dedicated. The best thing to do, I think, at this time, especially, Rob, is to get to the main website, just a sales landing page, themorganreport.com, and just get on our free email list. Why am I emphatic? Do I advertise to you in a blue moon? It's really not for that. It's for education. But more importantly, if the net goes down, or if I'm taken off of YouTube and Twitter and some of these platforms, I do have backup channels on Odyssey and a couple more. But my email list is on my own private server that I own. So I will be able to stay in touch. Now, of course, people that are paid members already are on the private server, and they are going to have an exclusive, you might say, that they're not going to get lost in the weeds. But those that are just looking at our public views, like what you and I are doing right now, if they are on the mailing list and something goes awry, we'll at least have a connection. If you're not on that, there may be a day where you're searching all over the place, and all of a sudden, just David Morgan, who it doesn't exist anymore. Believe me, we've seen it happen to people that had a lot more clout than I do, that more or less just disappeared right off the internet. So you want to be a little bit careful. So that would be the reason to get on the mail.
Okay, well, certainly appreciate it, and all the all the help you provided here for the StockPulse Silver Symposium, and look forward to doing that again in late August. And we'll certainly be back in touch. And I have a feeling we're going to have a pretty interesting year here. So I'll be looking forward to getting more of your thought-provoking ideas. So David Morgan, Morgan Report, thanks again for your time.
Rob, my pleasure. Thank you.